We'll take on, head-on, underreported critical issues destructive to our nation with Clare Lopez on this episode of United Patriots Uprising with Gary Binford. I'm your host, Gary Binford. Thanks for joining us. This podcast is available at radioinfluence.com or wherever you get your favorite podcast. The video version you can find at YouTube and many other places. We will tell you where you can get the show at the end of the broadcast. You know, going back 5 years, for 3 years in a row, I really look forward to going down to Greenville, South Carolina from New York to attend the Rock the Red Conservative Convention. It was a weekend convention, and it was amazing, the guests that they had speaking. And from that convention, I'm going to read the guests who have appeared on the show. Tom Holman, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, Mike Lindell, Trevor Loudon, Tracy Beans, John DeLemme, John Guandolo, Lucretia Hughes, Gene Ho, Jovan Hutton Pulitzer, Candace Taylor, Dan Schultz. And all of them, with the exception of Mike Lindell, they've been on the show at least 2 times. Also among the speakers was Clare Lopez. And the MCs each time were Donna Fiducia and Don Newen of Cowboy Logic Radio. And what a great job they did. And after the convention was over, late Saturday night, Newen, Fiducia, Clare, and I, and sometimes joined by like John DeLemme and Trevor Loudon, would sit in the lounge and just to talk about the world. We just discuss the world, what's going on in America, what's right, what's wrong, and what can we do to stop this Marxist communist takeover of America. And next thing you know, it'll be 4 or 5 in the morning, we go to bed. Then you get up Sunday and everybody's gone except who? Newen, Fiducia, Clare, and myself. So we started up again from 11 to 2 or 3 in the afternoon until we finally decided to go back to the airport and head for wherever we were heading for. And we'd have these great conversations about what we needed to do to save this country. So what I'm going to do with Clare, I have no questions for her. I'm just going to sit and we're going to play like Newen and Fiducia are with us. And we're going to get into some critical issues to our nation and what can we do about them. So are you ready? Well, let's get into it. She was a career operating officer with the CIA who has also served as a consultant, instructor, intelligence analyst, and researcher for a variety of defense firms. An author, a regular online blog contributor at Newsmax, as well as on-air analysis with One America News and other news outlets. I welcome back to the show the founder of Lopez Liberty LLC and my friend Clare Lopez. How are you, Clare?
Hey, Gary. Hi. I'm glad to be with you again.
I'm glad to be with you too. And we see each other more than a lot of other people that were at the Rock the Red because we're on a lot of Zooms together where you're speaking on a Zoom, I'll come on, and then sometimes we'll end up on a Zoom presentation when we both like the guests. So we see each other, and every time I have a question about anything involving government or anything in the world, you're the first person I call. But I really miss our get-together Saturday night, early into Sunday morning with Newen and Fiducia. We're sitting there in the lounge at the Rock the Red in Greenville. Everybody's asleep, and we're still talking. And we talk till 3, 4 in the morning. Then we get up and we're still talking 11, 12, 1, 2, and we eventually leave the premises and go back home. Why did we do that?
You know, I think we really enjoyed, I know you did, coming together there at those Rock the Red conferences. You know, all our favorite people, of course, Don and Donna top that list, and, you know, some who are no longer with us, sadly. But we just really enjoyed getting together and, you know, hashing over the events of the day.
I perfectly understand that. And the events of the day, we were always trying to find solutions. And one of the things I like to do on this show is tell people what the problems are in the country, but also provide solutions. So we're like, this is going to be casual, just like we're sitting there. We'll play like Don and Donna are here. And this is the type of stuff we do. And if somebody started a conversation, and Don or Donna or you or I would lean over and say, what is the biggest problem we have in America right now that nobody knows about, that both sides of the media, either the mainstream media, which is disingenuous, or even the conservative media, really isn't paying enough attention to?
Well, unfortunately, the problems we have today are very well covered in oceans of ink and pixels online. And they include, of course, domestic national security issues, as well as a number of national security hotspots around the world. So we can take our pick.
I got to stop you right there, because you coming out of the CIA and being involved in security, and the beautiful thing about you, because you spent most of your time outside the United States, you have a really strong understanding about how the system works from outside, trying to attack us from within, where most people here only know what's going on within and looking out. Explain to the people that just because you don't get hit, or just because we haven't had another 9/11, doesn't mean our nation is securely at risk. And I'm not trying to scare the people, but explain to them what national security really is and why there's an issue. And to me, it's just the grace of God that we haven't had another major hit at this point.
Well, unfortunately, I would say we've had all too many very serious hits very recently. Of course, the assassination of Charlie Kirk there on that university campus in Utah back on September the 10th, day before 9/11 commemoration, right? But even before that, over the last many months and so, we have had, unfortunately, a series of horrible, tragic shootings in places like the church in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the school in Nashville, Tennessee, the synagogue in Uvalde, Texas. And, we are once again, it seems to me, slipping into the kind of domestic strife that we saw back in the 60s and 70s even. And here it is again, which is essentially a communist Marxist revolution that now is in collaboration with the Islamic movement, and in particular, the Muslim Brotherhood and its front groups here in America, opportunistically aligned in what we would call a red-green axis, but nevertheless, for the moment, aligned.
Yeah. And you said something that I hadn't considered, because I understand an underlying issue of why these things are happening, but I hadn't really thought about it from the point of view of somebody as brilliant as you are, that all of these random shootings actually tie into a national security problem. See,
yeah, they sure do.
Usually when you think of national security, you think of a big group that is creating, that has a mantra, and they're looking to bring down the country, and we look at them. But you're saying now, and I think part of this is because the left's saying we're evil. And one of the things we always talk about on the show, what can you do with evil? You can jail it or you can kill it. So by, just like last week, by Gavin Newsom saying Stephen Miller is evil. Excuse me, it wasn't, he didn't say he was evil. He said, what does he call him, a fascist? He called him either fascist or evil. By doing that, you actually put a bullseye on somebody, so some crazy person can go out and take a shot at them. So I never really tied that together. Is that what you're saying? That all of these shootings are really tied in by the climate, which makes it a national security issue?
It's a lot more than the climate. If you excuse me one moment, I'm going to lean over and pull a little book off my shelf. All right. The one I'm pulling off my shelf is, let's see, which way does this?
Yep, the Communist Manifesto. That way, right there. Nope, right there, okay. Right there. There's Marx. He's
everything
right in the middle.
Is backwards on my screen. So the Communist Manifesto.
Fine. Perfect. Right.
But inside of it, I have this little cheat sheet, which is a listing of the 45 goals of communism today. This was written as chapter 13 of the 1958 book by then former FBI agent W. Cleon Skousen.
And we use this all the time on the show, so go for it.
I do. And so I want to pull together some of the things that we're looking at and that you kind of just mentioned as well. We've talked, of course, about communism and Marxism. What I'll say is that it was W. Cleon Skousen, as I said. Everything is backwards on this screen. Cleon Skousen, who either himself, and I don't know which, himself either attended, maybe in person, or watched the early 1950s congressional hearings, House on Un-American Activities Committee, and then, of course, in the Senate, Senator Joseph McCarthy's committee, with testimony about communism, Marxism, and including testimony from former communists, like Abela Dodd, for example. And it was from, in any way that he got that information, talking to people later or in person himself, I don't know which, that he compiled this list of the 45 goals of communism today. And some of the things that really catch my attention, and I'll just read you a few of them, not all 45, I promise.
And let me, before you start, people remember, this isn't yesterday and it wasn't 10, 20, 30 years ago. He did this and he infiltrated the Communist Party. He did this and wrote this book in 1958. Remember that?
Yeah, it was published in 58 in any case. I think chapter 13, this one, might have been added a little bit later, but I will say that by 1963, this was read into the proceedings of the United States Congress. So let's look at a few of the goals of communism, and let's think how these relate to some of the things we're seeing going on in America right now, across the world, but in America particularly, here right now today. All right, let's look at number 24. Eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and a violation of free speech and free press. Number 25, break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, they mean films, movies, radio, and TV. Let's go to number 26. Present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, and healthy. So I won't go through all the rest of them, but let's just look at those right there and think about now, with the advent of the internet, of all of these horrible social media sites, that too many of these accused shooters in the attacks we mentioned a bit ago, too many of them spending hours upon hours online in these chat rooms, at websites like Discord and others, names I don't even know, thank goodness, but that this is considered acceptable somehow. Not by us, not hopefully, I don't expect, by those who are watching and listening to us, no, but by too many across American society. So has communism and Marxism, have they succeeded in some of these goals from way back in the 1950s, when we had an FBI that really went after communism and Marxism? Kind of lost its way in some years since then. Hopefully, we're hoping very much that it can get back on track now under new leadership. But even at this point, when we know that many of these shooters that we're talking about were either themselves transgender or identifying as transgender, or were close to those who were, like, for example, the roommate of Tyler Robinson, the accused shooter of Charlie Kirk, identified, I guess he was gay, but he identified or was transitioning to female, or so I don't know if that's a gay relationship now, or that makes it heterosexual. I'm lost, but in any case, they're really mixed up. They're really mixed up. But add to that now the hormones and other drugs that we know that mentally disturbed people thinking they're men when they're really women, or women when they're really men, the drugs they're taking. And then add on top of that what is becoming more and more known through revelations and medical speaking about it more openly than before, the effects of the use of marijuana. That marijuana, even a single time, but more often habitually, in people with a genetic predisposition to vulnerability, and considering the very much more potent varieties of marijuana being grown and distributed today, those people can be triggered into schizophrenia, psychosis, or even an immediate homicidal psychotic episode. So put all of that together, and it's a toxic brew. And then we can add to that the fact that we know that China is buying up huge tracts of U.S. farmland. Not a problem just because some of that is located near to our national security facilities like military bases, but also because they're turning those farmlands into pot farms. And then in collaboration with the Mexican drug cartels and, of course, the black market, because you get a lot more money for your product on the black market if you don't pay taxes in places where it's been marijuana's been foolishly legalized. But in collaboration, the cartels, the black market, distributing this pot all over the United States. So put all of that together.
Hold on one second, because you said the magic word, but hold on one second, because I want to backtrack to something you said and something that Cleon Skousen said. When he said, take degeneracy and take sexual immorality and call it natural. And I'll never forget now, looking back, and don't spank me for this, Claire, but back in the days when I was trying to be a Playboy in my, late 70s and early 80s, and I was going to the Playboy Club, I had my Playboy key, and I was going to try and be a player, which that never worked out. But Hugh Hefner was my guy, one of the guys. I couldn't wait till Playboy at night came on. And every time Hugh Hefner came on TV, and somebody would say, well, Mr. Hefner, do you think it's really right to be in bed with 3 girls and 2 guys, or 2 girls and 1 guy, or this, that, the other thing? And he always said the same thing. It's healthy. It's healthy. Maybe he read the Communist Manifesto, because it's healthy, and it's not healthy. It's degenerate. And we fell for it. And God, you nailed that. Now, huh?
What's the we stuff?
What's the we? America fell for it. That's why we have all these. Yeah, well, but enough people that they have pushed the homosexual agenda. They've pushed the abortion agenda. Because all of that comes back to having sex, and abortion is to erase mistakes. But and now we have this transgender, which spurns out of the homosexual movement that we were being warned about in that very book. So all of this, as they say, the chickens have come home to roost, and this is scary to me and a lot of people that we've allowed this to go this far. Now, you said the magic word. I was going to save that because that was going to be our next topic. And the magic word, I like to do this since Donna Fiducia isn't here. We'd be sitting there, and Donna would love to say China the way Trump would say it. She'd go, China, and Donna would just be, China. And so are we sleeping on China? Because I don't think most people have any clue what's going on.
I think this administration, President Trump at the leadership, they do have an understanding that China is bent on global domination, and that we have been under attack by China in multiple ways, unrestricted warfare, right, for a very long time. And if we look again at unrestricted warfare, and I'll lean over to my bookcase one more time.
Now, I understand the Trump administration understands, but do we understand the threat?
Well,
Does
enough
the average
people
Joe
don't
American?
necessarily. But I pulled off of my bookshelf. Which way does this go? There we go.
Right there. You're good. You're good.
Okay,
It's fine.
there we go.
Perfect. Perfect.
This basically the military manual of the People's Liberation Army of China, published in the English version here in 1999. There's a page in the middle of this book where it is listed a whole variety of methods of operation, as it's called, by the Chinese, not just the People's Liberation Army, but the entire regime of Beijing, the Chinese Communist Party, the PLA, of course, together, but the regime as a whole. And I won't read the whole list because there are probably a couple dozen kinds of warfare here, but listen to a couple. Diplomatic warfare, financial warfare, biochemical warfare, intelligence warfare, and on and on. I'll focus in on biochemical warfare. We know, of course, well, some of us know and more need to know, that in May of 2019, in one of the main CCP regime media outlets, the Xinhua News, it was published and written that China declared a people's war against the United States. Now, that was at the time of the Trump administration and a lot of back and forth over trade and commerce and sanctions and that sort of thing. And it was understood by too many, I think, that declaration of people's war was just in the context of trade back and forth and sorting out, our trade differences. Well, it wasn't. It was unrestricted warfare. And those and other of the operations of military operations that I mentioned there. Now, back to biochemical warfare, right? We know that China has been instrumental in working very closely with the Mexican drug cartels for a long time in funneling fentanyl into our country. China provides the raw materials, the precursor chemicals to the drug cartels, as well as the pill presses to actually press out the tablets, the pills themselves. And the Mexican cartel, Sinaloa for sure, others, mix it all up and make what is eventually the product, fentanyl, and then press out the pills and send them across our border. Now, of course, under President Trump, this administration has declared war against the drug cartels, literally, and blown at least 3, maybe more, but at least 3 of the narco traffickers' boats filled with drugs. Maybe it was fentanyl, maybe cocaine, I don't know, maybe both, blown them out of the water in the Caribbean. Now, after that has happened, President Trump was sort of jokingly noting that in a press conference or speaking before the media a day or two ago, noting that there aren't even any fishermen out in the Caribbean anymore because, they're not taking any chances that they might be misidentified. But come to biological warfare then. We know that the SARS-CoV-2 is a product of the bio warfare labs in China, part of the decades-old biological warfare program of the Chinese Communist Party, which came to power, of course, with Mao, 1949, and immediately in very close collaboration with then Joseph Stalin of the Soviet Union. And because China at that time was not well developed economically, technologically, or any other way, the Soviets provided a great deal of assistance to them across the board, weapons and everything else you can think of, And oh yeah, by the way, biological warfare. So China has had an offensive biological warfare program for, at least 70 years, let's say, more. And of course, the SARS-CoV-2 was a product of that. And I see here in the United States huge amounts of attention focused on the American public health officials, like an Anthony Fauci, like a Ralph Baric, like a LeDuc down in Texas, like Peter Daszak in New York, focused on them and their roles in getting involved in offshoring gain of function laboratory procedures to the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China when that kind of laboratory research was banned here in the United States due to recognition of how dangerous it could be. And all the attention is focused on the Americans. But I have not heard media, academia, Congress, the White House, the National Security Council, none of the above, really taking aim and talking about the Chinese offensive biological weapons program that lured, I think, deliberately lured these American public health officials into collaboration with them, knowing what they were going to unleash on America and the world, and thereby spreading the guilt, ensuring the guilt would be spread, but even more so, depriving, taking away any last remaining measure of faith or trust of the American people in our public health institutions, such that even were something even worse than SARS-CoV-2 to come along, Americans would no longer listen to public health advice, and that could be deadly. You see how all this fits together?
I hear you, Claire, but I have two words I want to ask you about why everybody in the government is sleeping on China. Why not? Why you're saying China's why hasn't anybody been paying attention or showing the root cause of this? Why are they getting this pass, in your opinion?
Well, I would say, first of all, that the Trump administration, even going back to his first administration, and now, of course, in his second term, is very much on China's case. But that pressure against China seems to have more to do, again, with trade issues, sanctions and tariffs and that sort of thing. I don't hear a lot of attention paid to the things we were just talking about, the biological chemical warfare. Yes, they're absolutely going after the drugs. So let me take that off the table there. Yes, they're going after the narco traffickers, with China, of course, in the background supplying precursor chemicals and working with the Mexican drug cartels, as are, by the way, Hezbollah units inside of Mexico. So they are going after those. And of course, closing our southern land border with Mexico has really made a big difference in the trafficking of drugs across that border. The northern border, too, to some extent. And now the waterways are being closed off, too. So let's take that away. But as far as the biological warfare part of it that we're talking about, no, I don't see administration, academic, public health, media, think tank, any attention whatsoever paid to China's biological warfare program. And I'm simply at a loss. I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, from Rock the Red, three of the people that I met down there who I've developed the relationships with, and, we all, I love all three of you, and that's you, and there's the former FBI agent, John Guandolo, and our friend, the author and filmmaker, Trevor Loudon. And the thing that all three of you have in common, you all understand the connection between what communism is doing on one end and what Islam is doing on the other end. And as Trevor says, eventually Islam and communists, their plan is to fight for world domination. But in order for that to happen, it would have to be over our dead caucuses. And you understand the connection in John's boy, and Trevor, the Muslim Brotherhood over here, communism, they seem to be coming from different angles, but they're coming at the same thing, the destruction of the United States.
I mean, you're absolutely right that this is an opportunistic alignment. We call it the red-green axis. It's certainly at odds with how we think of these two ideologies, the communist Marxist one, and the kinds of things that we just talked about in the 45 goals, not Islamic at all. And on the other hand, of course, Islamic doctrine. However, for the moment, it's ad hoc, it's opportunistic, and it's because they share the same enemy, and that is, first of all, more broadly, Western civilization, but more specifically, the constitutional republic of the United States of America. And if they can bring us down, if they can collapse our society from within, this is not all about kinetic violence, as we're talking, many other means and methods, including information operations, psychological operations, propaganda. If they can bring us down, then what chance does the rest of the world have, the rest of the Western civilization? And that includes, not just geographically the West, but all of those, modern nation states, wherever they may be, who value and cherish and protect, the liberties and the human rights enshrined in Western civilization.
Yeah, I hear you. One of the things it would be like about 3 a.m. I'd have one eye open and you'd have one. New one's always awake. And Donna would be starting to yawn. And then somebody would say, okay, we've picked all the scabs. Now, how do we solve this thing? And then we start thinking about solutions, and somebody would say, well, why don't we do this? And somebody will say, why don't we do that? So my question to you right here and right now, what can the average Joe, the average Jane, what can the average American citizen do to get involved in the struggle to save America? And what must be done to keep us a constitutional republic and keep us free?
Well, first of all, listen and learn, hopefully, perhaps something not known before, from broadcasts just like yours, Gary, and others.
And yours. We'll get into that.
And the courses, that our buddies are teaching across the country to law enforcement and to basically local civilian communities who realize something is wrong but want help in defining and countering it. Sign up for some of those courses. If you don't know where or how, let Gary know, and I'll get the information to him, to you. At the national level, I want to point out a new national security presidential memorandum, number 7, it's called, that President Trump issued on September the 25th this year, 2025. And the name of it is called Countering Domestic Terrorism and Organized Political Violence. And I won't go into all of it, but basically what it does is outlines a whole of government approach and a law enforcement-led approach to going after these networks, Antifa. Very difficult, of course, because there is no one Antifa. There's not an org chart with a grand wizard up at the top of the design, the chart. You can't take it apart like that. Loosely organized, very lightly, if at all, interconnected insurgency cells. Perfect insurgency model. But there are others. For example, we've seen exposés about something called the Armed Queers SLC, Salt Lake City, Armed Queers of Salt Lake City. There are all kinds of other groups like this across the United States, which are not, again, they're not defined in some neat org chart, with the leader at the top, and then there's the treasury, the treasurer, and the secretary, and on down, with neat little boxes. It's not like that, which makes it very difficult. But that's how an insurgency is conducted. And that's what we're facing in the United States. We're facing a disconnected, disaggregated, cell level insurgency, but the common ideologies that bind them together are communism and Marxism, and also on the other side, the green side, of course, the Islamic movement and Islamic doctrine through the Muslim Brotherhood front groups. So what I see still necessary, still lacking at our top administration level is an understanding of exactly who the enemy is. And I would go to Sun Tzu at this point and say a quote from him where he wrote, if you know yourself and the enemy, then you need not fear the outcome of 1,000 battles. Well, I think we know ourselves pretty well. We, the people of this constitutional republic, pretty well. But how about knowing the enemy? If we don't know, and that is from the administration level all the way down through federal law enforcement to the local level, county level, sheriff's departments, police departments, we and the communities of Americans, of American, citizen patriots, if we don't understand what we're up against, what defines this enemy, what binds the enemy together, even when there aren't, networks linked together, as we said in this org chart formation, we don't have that. But unless we understand the thinking process, the Weltanschauung, right, the worldview that binds them together, we're not going to be successful. Yes, we can unleash, a whole of government approach on down to the state level, the local level of law enforcement, and go after actual crimes, which we must, the arson, the looting, the rioting, assault, battery, all of those things, right? But if we don't understand that those are only the visible external symptoms of an underlying Bolshevik, communist, Marxist revolution in the making, and understand how the 45 goals, for example, link these otherwise seemingly not connected entities like transgenders. Where do they fit in? That's not organized crime, except maybe in some instances it may be now.
Shooting people, right? Yeah.
But unless you understand what binds them together, we're not going to get at the root of this, even if we, exert full-on effort to go after the criminals for the crimes they're committing, which we must do. And that is the determination, of the Trump administration with this presidential memorandum, and all to the good, absolutely. But there's nothing in there about the actual ideology, Weltanschauung again, that we're facing, and I think that's lacking, and it's I think it's necessary to add to the offensive, the program of the whole of government.
I agree with you, Clare. And what Clare is saying, everybody, is we've got to get to the root. See, what we're seeing is the fruit. We're seeing the rotten, stank fruit, but you've got to get to the root. You've got to get to and understand the ideology behind it, because if you don't understand the ideology behind it, all you're going to do is just be picking off what the low-hanging fruit you see, and you'll never get to what has to be dug up from the bottom of the ground. All this skank Marxist, communist, socialist, whatever you want to call it, that's infected our country. Clare, thanks for coming. Before I ask you to tell people how to find you and anything you like to promote along the lines of what you just said, I live and can get to Manhattan, New York City, in 40 minutes. Did you ever think in your lifetime that you would ever see a city like New York City actually trying to elect a straight up communist mayor?
Well, yeah, actually I did. But Zohran Mamdani is not just a self-professed communist, full-on communist, seizure by the government of the means of production, forcible reallocation, redistribution of wealth through confiscatory taxation, government-run grocery stores, defunding the police, disbanding the police. The exodus has already begun from New York by those with the means to do so, CEOs, investors, business people, already making a beeline. Watch the real estate down in Florida, Tennessee, Texas. Watch the prices of that real estate in coming weeks. But what I wanted to add is that not only is Zohran Mamdani a full-on communist, he is a Shiite Islamic 12er.
Ding, 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 ding. He's got both sides covered.
He shares the same ideology, the same eschatology about the 12th Imam, the figure called the Mahdi for the Shiites, and the belief by the top levels of the Iranian regime, the Ayatollahs, the juridical system of Islamic law, and of the military and the forces of the IRGC and so forth, shares that ideology. And what is that ideology? It is that they believe they can hasten the return of the 12th Imam, again, their messianic Mahdi figure, hasten his return to earth to usher in 1,000 years of Islamic rule on earth after what they call breaking the cross and killing the pig. Ever heard that?
No, I haven't heard that one.
Killing all the remaining Christians on earth and killing the pig, the Jewish people on earth, who are right now in the midst of Yom Kippur celebration or commemorations, I should probably say, one of the holiest of the high holy days in the Jewish calendar. Shana Tova to all of our Jewish friends. But yes, if you put together these things, and they're not contradictory necessarily, communist Marxist and an Islamic Shiite 12er who believe that they can hasten that return of their messianic figure by what? By instigating Armageddon on earth. Now, if that doesn't cause some worry and concern among the electorate in New York City, they're hopeless.
Well, unfortunately, I have some people, and I'm going to mimic one person, and my best friend will know what I'm doing, but I'm going to mimic somebody when you tell them this, and they go, "What do you want me to do? Vote for Trump?" Boy. Hey,
no, but you could vote for one of the other candidates. Not a very inspiring bunch, I would say, except for the Republican candidate, Curtis Sliwa. The others, are not all that inspiring, although some are dropping out now, as we've seen. Eric Adams, for mayor of New York City, dropping out just recently. But, it's the worst or the worst, choices that you've got now. A communist Marxist Shiite 12er or one of the others. But Curtis Sliwa stands out to me as the best of the bunch.
Absolutely, and this is where we are, America, and we've got to start pushing back, but pushing back comes with knowledge. Claire, one of the things I love about you, beside your knowledge and being my friend, is that anytime I call you, I hear back from you, no matter how busy you are or wherever you are, usually as long as you're in the United States, within a half hour. And I can't even do that. It's like you always get back to me either on your cell or home phone. I really appreciate that, because I'm hanging over the cliff with a question I need to know an answer to. What is going on with the FBI? What's going on in the government? What's on it? And you always have the answers So I really appreciate you for being my friend, who you are and what you do. And you've been wonderful. Thanks for coming back. This is, I think, your 8th time on the show. Please tell people how they can reach you, where they can reach you, and anything else you'd like to promote.
Well, certainly, please follow Gary's own podcast here, for starters. And then you can go to a number of sites, the Citizens Commission on National Security, the American Truth Project. One website I'd really point out for us all, the United West, theunitedwest.org, carrying a lot of information about mayoral candidate in New York City, Zohran Mamdani. Have a look at theunitedwest.org. And then I'm on social media also. Oh, I missed one, the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement. And then on social media, at my name, Clare M. Lopez on Twitter, X or whatever. Same, my name on Facebook, at Clare Cho on Truth Social, and at Lopez Liberty on Telegram.
Right, and make sure you on One American News, right? You're there, and you pop up on Newsmax every. Is it One American News? Did I say that right?
One American News. As a matter of fact, I just recorded another program on the John Hines Weekly Roundup this morning, which will air for those who can get the channel over the weekend. At Newsmax, I'm on every now and then, and also write at my Newsmax blog site, In Defense of Liberty, as often as I can, but I've got to pick up the pace a little bit there.
You know, you amaze me with the wealth of knowledge you have, not only about what's going on in our country, but if you want to talk about China or Iran or Russia or it doesn't matter what you can speak the languages. You know, you're one amazing person. So thank you for coming back. Keep up the great fight. I know I don't have to warn you to let them grind you down, because they have no choice in grinding you down. You're going to stay strong forever. So thank you for who you are and what you do, and God bless you and the family.
Thanks so much, Gary, and the same back to you.
There you have it. Clare Lopez, telling it like it is. I want to thank Clare Lopez for coming back on the podcast. This is probably her 8th appearance on my show, and she always has a wealth of information to give us. She cares greatly, and she understands a lot, and she's always available to help educate people about what we really need to know about what is going on from the inside and from the outside to try and destroy our great country. So I thank you, Clare, for who you are, what you do. Keep up that great fight, and just keep doing what you're doing, reaching whoever you can reach, because even if you reach one person, hopefully that person will talk to somebody else, and that person to somebody else. And as you know, this is how knowledge is spread, because there's a country that we need to save while we still have time to do so. This podcast is available at radioinfluence.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. The video version you can find at YouTube, Rumble, the God Family and Country Television Network, the Rose Unplugged Media Network, vachristian.org, the America First Warehouse.com, yournews.com, the OBBM Network TV, and WeSeeYouMedia.com. Wherever you go, leave us a rating and review, and please subscribe. Now, almost in my 5th year, and we were audio for the first 3 years. Then if you want to go back and listen to some of the audio broadcasts, you can find them at radioinfluence.com/category/United Patriots Uprising/ and what people said back then, I really believe is just as valid today, if not even more so, because the warnings they issued then, a lot of what people were warning about has happened. And the guests include Ben Carson, Monica Crowley, Kira Davis, Donna Fiducia and Don Newen, Carol Swain, Brandon Tatum, Will Witt, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, Diamond and Silk, Jamie Glazoff, Pastor Jack Hibbs, Gene Ho, Kerry Lake, Mike Lindell, and Judge Janine Pirro. So I encourage you to go back to the archives and check that out. And again, as I said, a lot of wealth of information that can even help today to educate and to edify. Well, that's it for now, everyone. So until the next time, this is your host, Gary Binford, saying God bless you, God bless your families, and God, please bless America.